To start this class, product processing and cooling, the first thing that I want to discuss or think about is what are all of the things that are entailed in product processing and cooling? What is it? And before we begin, what I'd like you to do is hit pause, take out a piece of paper, and set a timer for maybe 10 minutes. And write down as many things as you can that you're dealing with in product processing and cooling. These are all the things that happen for the most part after you've harvested. We're not talking about harvest. Now, there are some things that you will do in harvest. For example, harvest earlier in the day when the product is still cool, so you don't harvest hot product in the afternoon during a hot summer day. For some products, that is very important. So there's some things related to the harvest that is important. Even before harvest, that last irrigation that you do, you have to time it right so you're out there harvesting with healthy, happy, well-watered plants, but it's not muddy. You're not sinking the tractor into the mud because you watered a little too close to harvest, and now you're burying your tires of your harvest equipment out in the field and creating a mess. In some crops, you can't really avoid a little bit of that. Celery is notoriously bad for destroying fields and getting in the mud because you always have to put a lot of water on till the very end. And so you're harvesting celery in the mud. Is that good for the soil? No. Is that easy to keep the product clean? No, of course not. But it is certainly something that you have to take into consideration. How can you minimize those mud problems in celery or avoid them altogether in other crops? So hit pause and give it 10 minutes. Write down everything you can think of, and I'll wait. Okay, now some of you I know are lying. You didn't pause for 10 minutes. You're just going to go right through without doing the exercise. I would really encourage you to do it, however. Think about it. Get your brain going. Everything you can think of. What do you have to do with product processing and cooling? Now, in class, the way I would do this is on the whiteboard or chalkboard. If I'm in a very old classroom, I would write down things as students tell me, and we would talk about them one at a time. In this class, we're not able to do that, but let me share the screen. I don't have an easy way to do anything like that, so I'm going to just jump into a list that we did the last time I taught this class. So first, the category processing is processing and cooling. So let's start with processing. Well, there are things like value added. You should know what that means. There's a commodity and a value added. What's the difference? A commodity is when you go into the grocery store and you just buy apples. There's a pile of apples, and you pick the variety you want, you stick them in a bag and go buy them. Nobody did anything to them except maybe wash them, maybe stick them in a 5-pound bag or something to buy them in bulk or something. That's not really value added to stick them in a bag. You have to do something more than just wash them and stick them in a bag. So there are lots of things in the supermarket produce section that are just commodities. They're just harvested, prepared for sale, and put out there. Other things are truly value added. Instead of going and buying half a dozen peaches, you buy canned peaches. That's value added. Somebody cleaned, peeled, de-seeded, and sliced or chopped the peaches and stuck them in a can in a sterile situation and created canned peaches with, made with juice or syrup or whatever you prefer in your canned peaches. That's value added. Or instead of just buying a head of lettuce and a little bit of cabbage and maybe some croutons and some dressing, you can buy a salad kit. And it already has some carrots and croutons and different kinds of lettuce, even where you've got a little iceberg or crisp head lettuce. You've got a little bit of romaine and maybe even some other greens, some spinach, some cabbage. And now you've got a salad. That's value added. And there's a lot to it. What is the canning process, the bagging process of a salad? It's not just stuck in a plastic bag. It is a special breathable bag that has a mathematically calculated and scientifically designed film that allows oxygen to move in and out of that bag of salad at a very specific, very slow rate. So there's not enough oxygen that gets in to turn the product brown, but there is enough oxygen that gets in the bag to keep it from smelling funny when you open it up. If it runs out of oxygen, it smells like acid aldehyde, and that's bad. So there's tons of research and money spent to figure out, how do you stick salad in a bag? That's value added. Instead of buying wheat, a sack of wheat, and then having to make it into flour and then bake your own bread, you just go to the bread aisle. That's a value added ag product. Something significant has been done to slice, prepare, can, mix, whatever. Washing and drying. How do you wash and dry the product so you don't damage it? The product is of high quality. What about chopping, cutting, slicing, dicing? Julian, how do you make the product in the shape you want? A lot of technology in slicers, dicers, choppers, shredders, peelers, de-seeders, you name it. You have to do so many different things in order to get the product out of the field and then get it into a form that you want the consumer to see on their plate or on their fork. Then there's the assembly line. How do you put it all together? There's an entire engineering discipline called industrial engineering. Industrial engineering is the engineering of efficiency of processes. And there's mechanical engineering that's involved in there as well. How do you do the mechanical design for all of these assembly lines? How do you do the electrical design, electrical engineering? How do you do the computer programming to monitor and move the process along using smart technology, computer engineering and programming? But the industrial engineering is the efficiency and layout and processes of manufacturing. And in that assembly line, not only do you have to have it well engineered, it has to be efficient, but it needs to have food safety as part of it. How do you make sure that you're not introducing potential problems, not just diseases, but contaminants that could be oils that are non-food safe oils that shouldn't be anywhere around your assembly line if you're doing it right. Cleaning agents, you don't want the ammonia for cleaning the floors to somehow get into your canned peaches. There are lots of things related to food safety. And then packaging. Packaging has to fulfill a number of requirements. It has to protect the product from the environment. It has to enhance or provide for the food safety requirements. It has to keep pathogens to a minimum, which is part of food safety, but also insects from getting to the product. You need to have temperature control. So maybe some packages are designed for air, cold air to be able to flow through the packages. Think of your strawberry clam shells They have holes in them designed to let cool air move through and not to get moisture built up inside, because wet strawberries are strawberries that aren't going to last very long. So just the simple idea of a clamshell for strawberries, massive amounts of money in engineering design has gone into that. Moisture pads. Think of the meat that you've purchased in the past. Remember any meat where it's sitting on just a simple, it looks like a giant Band-Aid pad. There's engineering in that. Antimicrobial materials. It's not going to stick to the meat. You'd be amazed at how much research and testing goes into trying to package your materials. But it not only has to work for the product, it has to work for sales and marketing. There's a reason that we don't have cubicle boxes for cereal. One is convenience. You can grab the box of cereal and pour it easier. And you've got this rectangular advertisement sitting on the shelf. It's taken up a lot of shelf space. And the retailers are going to charge for that shelf space. So you want your cereal on that shelf, it's taken up a lot more space than a can of peas. Is it going to attract attention, look appetizing, look interesting, be useful in the information, get somebody to grab it and put it in their shopping cart and buy it? It also has to be good for transportation. Does it fit well on a pallet? Does it stack well? And go into a truck in order to what they call cube out a truck. You want to fill a truck up when you're transporting stuff in these large tractor trailer, big rigs. You want that trailer to be full. So things have to be standardized. So everybody's using the same size pallets. Everybody's using the same basic cube dimensions so the trucks can move whatever they need to move. But within those limits of a standardized truck and pallet structure, what are your cases going to look like? What are your packages going to look like? Can you cube out the truck safely? What about lightweighting? We'll talk about that later in the semester, but lightweighting is very important. That's when you're using thinner materials. When I was a kid, a Coke bottle you could use to build a house and hammer the nails. The Coke bottles were so thick. If any of you have bought glass bottles of Coca-Cola or something like that in Mexico, they still use the very thick bottles. They recycle them, not by melting them down and making a new bottle. They go back to a plant, the bottle is washed and refilled. And in order to go through that process, the bottles are thick. We don't have a society that can do that anymore here. We think we're great at recycling, we suck at recycling. And too many things don't get recycled. They're just going to be thrown out. People don't like the idea of what did somebody do with that bottle? I don't care that it was washed. So mentally, we can't get our heads around it here anymore. So instead of a very, very heavy bottle that's going to be washed and reused, and that has to be transported by truck over and over and over again, we use much thinner glass. Still has to be strong enough. Well, forget the glass. Let's go with plastic. Plastic doesn't shatter. And the plastic bottles initially, they were pretty dang sturdy. Nowadays, you get a water bottle from Costco. If you've ever had one of those, you just grab it. It feels like tissue paper. It's so thin. That saves money on the bottle. That saves money on transportation because you're not paying to truck around a bunch of plastic. And it's more efficient for the environment. At what point is it too thin? So there's lots of materials designed in making thinner cans, thinner bottles, thinner cardboard for boxes, less material used in packaging and everything you can think of. What about resealable packaging? That's getting more and more common. You open up whatever. You open up, holy moly. Sorry about that. Helicopter going overhead. You open up a bag of salad and you need a twist tie in your drawer somewhere, a clip of some sort, or can you just zip it shut? Or some sort of sticky material on some cookies, for example. Now you kind of peel back the top of the cookies, you grab whatever you want, and it lays back down almost like a Post-it note stickiness, where it sort of seals, it sort of doesn't. They assume that the cookies aren't going to last that long. So keeping a cookie fresh is a very different issue than keeping cheese or lettuce fresh. So there's different kinds of resealable packaging. Or something like strawberries, where you want to close the clamshell, but you don't want to seal it because too much humidity, too much moisture, if it gets wet inside, that's bad. So you have holes in the container of the strawberries. What about bulk food, food service? We'll talk about that in other classes more, but food service is when you're selling something to be sold again. So if I sell a 1 pound bag of salad, that's probably being sold to a consumer that's going to turn around and eat it. If I'm selling a 5 pound bag of shredded lettuce or a 10 pound bag of shredded lettuce, that's probably going to a Taco Bell or something like that to go into tacos. And there are lots of different bulk packaging that's designed for restaurants, hotels, and things like that. What about cooking? It's not just chopping things up and putting it in a bag. There's lots and lots of things that you might be doing with cooking. You might just need to heat things up to sterilize, like canning, or you might literally need to cook something if you're making bread, you're making crackers, you're making cookies, you're making applesauce. That is heated and cooked product. You're making frozen pizzas. You're making ready to eat meals. There's tons of things that you need to do, but it's not just cooking to prepare things. There's also packaging specifically for the cooking afterwards. So microwavable dishes, they've come a huge long way, where we can now microwave so many different things in the package. It's ready to go. Boil in a bag or microwave in a bag, where you can have something that's ready, a whole side dish. You just stick the bag in the microwave or stick it in a pot of boiling water, wait whatever the recommended time is. Boom, I've got a side dish or a main dish. Done. All because of specialized packaging. So I'm going to take a quick break here and be right back.